Welcome to another lovely winter's Sunday morning where I live in England. And as you can see, the lights are on, so there isn't an awful lot of sunshine around at the moment. It's pretty cold and miserable out there. But it brings me on to the subject of power. A few weeks ago we had, I think we had a brownout and an electrical surge. I can't be 100% sure because they don't tend to tell us this stuff. But we had a surge and a spike of some description, because when I came home in the evening I found that the surge protectors that I have on my studio had kicked in and had effectively burned themselves out. So that told me they did their job and we had a problem. So let's look at the sort of basic setup of the electricity supply into a home studio. If, like me, you don't have as many sockets as pieces of equipment, you tend to sort of go down the road to your local do-it-yourself store and buy one of these. Very cheap, normally sort of retail for about £1.50 UK wise, a couple of dollars I suppose US wise. Relatively cheap power extender. Okay, this one's a 1 to 3. You can go out and buy them 1 to 4. Probably now more typical 1 to 6 and 1 to 8. Okay, and as I say, they're relatively cheap to buy. You can buy them. You can plug multiple pieces of equipment into your rig. Job done. Power. The problem with these power supplies, or these power strips, if you like, is they actually give no protection to your equipment whatsoever. So if you do have a power surge or a brownout, these will just literally pass it straight on. So any piece of equipment that's on and even possibly connected, if the power surge was strong enough, could be damaged by a power surge. Now, as I say, in my instance, the surge protectors did their thing, so that's a good thing. So when you're putting your home studio together, one of the most important things, and probably never even thought about, is how do you protect the equipment. So there's a couple of reasons why you want to do this. The one is the incident I just highlighted, where you have a power surge or a brownout. The other incident is where you get dodgy contacts on a local electrical supply, and again, depending on where you live and how long the building's been there and the last time it was rewired and a number of other factors, the quality of the cabling and the socketry can vary from location to location, including the socketry coming in from the street, I might add, because that's how electricity companies sort of extend their network. They joint the cabling out in the street, so you could have issues there that are coming through. So there are a couple of things you want to think about doing. The first thing I would say to anybody who's got a home studio is go to your local DIY store, get rid of these and go and buy anti-surge devices. Okay, it'll probably be the best £20 you spend. Okay, they will stop a spike or a brownout getting to your equipment. So that's the first thing I would say. Go out now and buy anti-surge devices. The next thing you need to think about is what are you trying to protect your equipment from? So anti-surge is probably the most common issue you have. If you live in an area where you've got dodgy local wiring, whether it's in the building or whether it's somewhere else that's put in a hum. Now my studio is on, okay, so my amplifier is on, and you can hear no hum from the equipment whatsoever because my system is completely protected. So what you need to think about is, where is that hum coming from? Now, in the good old days, what some engineers used to do, and I was guilty of it when I was in my younger years working in studios and DJing, etc., of removing the earth wire from pieces of equipment, because quite often it was the local earth loop that was causing the problem. Really bad idea. Don't do it. I was young and naive at the time, and You know, I got a fair few 240 volt belts from the electricity supply through that sort of thing. So do not remove the earth cable. And to be honest, you know, in a lot of equipment now you can't do it anyway because the equipment itself has moulded plugs and what have you to stop you doing that. So again, going back to, you need to understand what are you trying to protect. So surge devices are at least the minimum. The second thing you might want to do is put something like a power conditioner into your setup, and what that will do is it will protect the supply from noises that are actually on the electrical mains. So in the UK we used to call it 50 Hz hum, which was sort of a hum you heard in the background when amplifiers were on, which is basically predominantly caused from a badly suppressed power supply. So you can go and buy a power conditioner. They start sort of relatively cheap and go up to relatively expensive. There's a company called Furman, and they you know, have fairly good models that start in sort of the £100 region, which is a sort of 1 in 10 out type arrangement, and that will condition the power. So effectively what it does is it isolates the incoming supply to the outgoing supply, or the outgoing load, and it will effectively remove any interference on the incoming supply. So they're quite good, and you quite often, if you go and have a nose around when you're out and about, you know, go and have a look at the, if you can, go and have a nose around, you know, live concerts, and you know, if you get to see someone's proper professional studio, go and have a nose around where they've got their power. You'll find that they're on power conditioners. And the third thing you might want to consider, which is going the next stage up from a power conditioner, is actually an uninterruptible power supply. Now again, a lot of professional studios are now on sort of they call it a UPS, on a UPS basis, and I have just put a UPS in on some of my equipment. And the reason I've done that is because things like this, which is the Kronos, are actually effectively a Linux computer under the bonnet. You know, the newer keyboards are moving more from sort of solid state logic of older years to you know, actual being computers themselves, and processing the algorithms to make the sounds. And it's how they become so functional, and how you can assign various knobs and buttons to different parts of the arrangement. So the reason I've done that is because I didn't want to lose the power while this thing was writing something and have the possibility of a hard disk crash. Because again, it's got a hard disk in it. That's how it writes and saves all the memory locations. And similarly, I've got another piece of equipment in the rig that's very, very similar to that, and a couple of other bits and bobs where it's probably not a good idea to have the power just go straight out. So I have gone and bought a UPS, and I would show you the UPS. Unfortunately, it's buried down the back here somewhere. So I'm not going to I can't get the camera in there, and I can't get me in there without taking everything out, and I'm not about to do that this morning. So a UPS effectively will run the equipment for a period of time to allow you to shut it down properly. Okay, so it gives you another layer of protection, in addition to surge filtering and protecting you from brownouts, which is where, and I keep using the word brownout, but I haven't said what a brownout is. So a brownout is effectively where the voltage is below what you're expecting. So in this case, in the UK, we're 240 volt supply. So a brownout would be, say for example, the supply was coming in at 200 volts, and some equipment is very, very susceptible to that sort of arrangement. So my advice is, you know, when you're putting your studio together, think about how you need it protected. As I've said before, at a minimum, go and put a surge protector in. Every piece of equipment you own is on a surge protector. Over and above that, you need to then work out how much protection do you need to give to pieces of equipment. The other piece of advice I sort of give you is that the older pieces of equipment, so you know, the Korg is a bad idea. I know I've got my hand on it, but this Korg is actually a bad idea because the power board in here is actually quite robust. But other pieces of equipment from other manufacturers, the power supply is not particularly great, very, very susceptible. So you want to look at those older pieces of equipment and decide for yourself how much power protection you want to give that piece of equipment. And quite a lot of time when you're using an older piece of equipment and you have got that hum on there, on the supply or on the audio output, it's coming from the mains input because it's badly suppressed between the power supply in the piece of equipment itself and the audio it's generating. So if you can clean the supply up on the way in, you're going to clean up the audio on the way out. Okay. Anyway, that's my Sunday morning tips on power to your studio. Hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.